Heritage photos are for blood only. Eleanor Prescott's wrinkled hands shoved my 9-year-old daughter out of the frame like she was discarding a piece of furniture, not a child. 87 family members watched in silence. And the woman who had spent 40 years preaching about Prescott family values had no idea that I'd spent the last 6 months uncovering every secret she'd buried in that attic. But here's what happens when you humiliate someone's child. You awaken something that doesn't negotiate. My name is Selena Prescott. I married into this family 4 years ago, and in approximately 3 minutes, I was going to dismantle everything Eleanor had built on lies, starting with the family she claimed was so pure. Let me take you back to the beginning. The Prescott family reunion was a sacred tradition, held every 5 years at the family estate in Savannah, Georgia. 300 acres of antebellum grandeur, dripping with Spanish moss and generational wealth. The Prescotts had been in Georgia since before the Civil War, and Eleanor never let anyone forget it. She'd commissioned a family tree that hung in the main hall, tracing the bloodline back 7 generations. Pure Prescott stock, she liked to say. Untainted. I'd known from my first visit that Eleanor didn't approve of me. I was a widow with a daughter, baggage, as I'd overheard her call us to her bridge club. My late husband had died in a construction accident when my daughter Lily was just 3. I'd raised her alone for 2 years before meeting Marcus Prescott at a fundraiser in Atlanta. Marcus was different from his family. Kind. Genuine. He'd fallen in love with Lily before he'd fallen for me, showing up at her soccer games, helping with her homework, reading her bedtime stories. When he proposed, he'd given Lily a ring too, a tiny silver band with a heart. I'm not just marrying your mom, he'd told her. I'm choosing to be your dad. If you'll have me. Lily had cried happy tears. So had I. Eleanor had not. That child will never be a real Prescott, she'd told Marcus privately, though not privately enough. I'd heard every word through the library door. Blood is blood. You can't make a stranger into family just by signing papers. Marcus had defended us. He'd threatened to skip family events. He'd argued until he was hoarse. But Eleanor was the matriarch. She controlled the family trust, the estate, the reunions. And Marcus, for all his good intentions, had never been strong enough to truly stand against her. For 4 years, I'd swallowed the slights. The accidental exclusion from family newsletters. The Christmas cards addressed only to Marcus. The way Eleanor would hug her biological grandchildren while barely acknowledging Lily's existence. But this was different. The reunion photographer had gathered everyone on the mansion's sweeping front steps. 87 Prescotts arranged by generation. The elders in chairs at the front, the children cross-legged on the grass. Lily had been so excited. She'd worn the dress we'd picked out together, had practiced her smile in the mirror, had asked me 3 times if her hair looked okay. This is my first real family photo, she'd whispered to me that morning. With everyone. She'd found a spot next to her step-cousins, grinning at the camera, finally feeling like she belonged. That's when Eleanor descended. Heritage photos are for blood only, she announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then she grabbed Lily's arm, actually grabbed her, and physically moved her out of the frame. Stepchildren stand to the side. We'll take a separate picture later for the extended family. Lily's face crumpled. She looked at Marcus, waiting for him to say something, to do something. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at Eleanor, then at Lily, then at the ground. He said nothing. Lily's lower lip trembled. A tear slid down her cheek. She was 9 years old, standing alone on the grass while 86 people who were supposed to be her family watched in silence. Something inside me snapped. I'd spent 6 months preparing for this moment, though I hadn't known it would come like this. See, 3 months ago, I'd been helping organize old photos in Eleanor's attic for the reunion slideshow. She'd asked me to do it, probably assuming I'd feel honored to be given a task. Instead, I'd found a locked box behind a stack of Confederate memorabilia. The lock was old. A hairpin opened it easily. Inside, I'd found letters, medical documents, and DNA test results from 1987 that Eleanor had clearly hoped would stay buried forever. I'd done my research quietly, made some calls, requested some records, confirmed everything twice, and I'd brought copies to the reunion, just in case. Just in case turned out to be right now. I walked calmly to the microphone that had been set up for the family speeches later. The photographer lowered his camera, confused. 87 Prescotts turned to stare. Since we're discussing heritage, I said, my voice steady through the speakers, I think this is the perfect time to share some interesting documents I found in Eleanor's attic. Eleanor's face went white. Selena, this is not the time. Oh, I think it's exactly the time. I pulled the folder from my bag. You just told my daughter she doesn't belong in this family because she's not blood. So let's talk about blood, Eleanor. Let's talk about the DNA test you took in 1987. The one that proves your son Richard isn't actually a Prescott. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Richard, Eleanor's eldest, the one she'd groomed to take over the family trust, went pale. That's a lie, Eleanor hissed. Is it? I held up the document. This test was ordered by your late husband, Theodore. Apparently, he had suspicions. The results show a 0% probability that Richard is his biological son. I flipped to another page. And these letters, love letters, actually, are from a man named William Hartley, your husband's business partner. The affair lasted 6 years. Eleanor gripped the arm of her chair. You have no right. I have every right. You just publicly humiliated my daughter over bloodlines. So let's examine yours. I turned to face the crowd. Richard Prescott, the man who's been positioned to inherit the family trust, the man who's been presented as the purest Prescott of his generation, is not a Prescott at all. He's a Hartley. Eleanor has known this for 36 years. Richard stumbled backward. His wife grabbed his arm. His 3 children, Eleanor's precious blood grandchildren who'd been positioned front and center in the photo, stood frozen. Which means, I continued, that your biological grandchildren through Richard, they're not Prescotts either. Not by blood. The very standard you just used to exclude my daughter. Eleanor's sister, Margaret, stood up from her chair. Is this true, Eleanor? Eleanor's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. There's more. I wasn't finished. I also found adoption records. Eleanor, would you like to tell everyone about your brother Bernard? The one who died young? The one whose photo is mysteriously absent from that precious family tree in the hall. Stop, Eleanor whispered. Bernard didn't die. He was adopted out when he was 3 because your parents didn't want a child with a disability. Cerebral palsy, according to the medical records. They sent him away and told everyone he'd passed from fever. He lived until 2019. He had a family, children, grandchildren, Prescott blood scattered across Tennessee, who have never been acknowledged. The crowd erupted. People were standing, shouting, demanding to see the documents. Eleanor's carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. I walked over to where Lily stood alone on the grass, still crying. I knelt down and wiped her tears. You know what makes someone family, baby? I said softly. Love. Showing up. Choosing each other every single day. Not blood. Not genetics. Not some name on a piece of paper. But Grandma Eleanor said. Grandma Eleanor is a hypocrite who's been lying to this family for decades. I stood up and took her hand. And she's not your grandmother. Marcus is your dad because he chose to be. That's more real than any bloodline. Marcus finally appeared at my side. His face was ashen. Selena, I'm so sorry. I should have. Yes, you should have. I didn't soften my voice. You should have defended your daughter. You should have stood up to your grandmother years ago. But you didn't. You froze. Just like you always freeze. I know. I know. He knelt down to Lily's level. Sweetheart, I am so sorry. I was wrong. I was a coward. You are my daughter, my real daughter, and I should have said that in front of everyone the moment she touched you. Lily looked at him for a long moment. You didn't say anything. She pushed me and you just stood there. I know, and I have to earn back your trust. But I promise you, I promise, that will never happen again. No one will ever make you feel like you don't belong. Not while I'm breathing. Behind us, chaos continued. Richard was shouting at Eleanor. Margaret was demanding answers about Bernard. Several family members had pulled out their phones, presumably looking up William Hartley. The photographer had quietly packed up his equipment and left. Eleanor pushed herself up from her chair and walked toward me, her cane clicking against the stone path. You've destroyed this family, she spat. No, Eleanor. You destroyed it 36 years ago when you chose to build everything on lies. I looked her directly in the eyes. I just turned on the lights. The trust documents will be contested. Richard's inheritance will be whatever the lawyers decide. But here's what I know for certain. You just lost something more valuable than money. You lost your moral authority. You lost the right to ever lecture anyone in this family about blood or belonging or who's a real Prescott. I took Lily's hand. Because the truth is, by your own standards, None of us are real Prescotts. Not Richard. Not his kids. Not even you, with your hidden brother and your buried secrets. We're all just people, messy, complicated people who either choose to love each other or don't. Eleanor's hands trembled on her cane. For the first time in the 4 years I'd known her, she had nothing to say. We left that afternoon, packed our bags, said goodbye to the few family members who weren't still in shock, and drove back to Atlanta. In the car, Lily was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Mom, what you did back there, was that wrong?" I thought about it carefully. Some people would say yes. I exposed secrets that weren't mine to share. I hurt people who maybe didn't deserve to be hurt, like Richard's kids, who didn't do anything wrong. So why did you do it? Because she hurt you. Because she's been hurting you for years. And because sometimes the only way to stop a bully is to show them they're not as powerful as they think they are. I glanced at her in the rearview mirror. But here's what I want you to remember. Family isn't about perfect bloodlines or big estates or whose name is on a piece of paper. Family is about who shows up, who holds your hand when you're scared, who cheers at your soccer games and reads you stories at bedtime. That's real. Everything else is just decoration. Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'll do better," he said quietly. "I promise. You better." But I squeezed back. 6 months later, Eleanor passed away. Heart attack, they said, though I suspected it was more about a broken spirit than a broken heart. Richard contested the trust and lost. Apparently Theodore had updated his will privately before his death, leaving the bulk of the estate to Marcus and his other biological children, with a specific provision that all grandchildren, by blood or by love, shall be treated equally. Turned out Theodore had known about Richard's parentage all along. He just hadn't had the courage to confront Eleanor while alive. We used our inheritance to establish the Theodore Prescott Foundation, providing scholarships for foster children and stepchildren. Kids who'd been told they didn't belong. Lily helped design the logo. She chose a picture frame with room for everyone. Last Thanksgiving, we took a new family photo. Marcus's siblings came with their families. Bernard's descendants drove up from Tennessee. 23 people who'd never known they had Prescott relatives until I made that phone call. We spread across the front porch of our modest home in Atlanta, 3 generations of people connected not by perfect bloodlines, but by choice. Lily stood right in the center, grinning so wide her face could barely contain it. "Everyone squeeze in," the photographer called out. And we did. All of us. No one pushed aside. No one excluded. No one told they didn't belong. Because that's what real heritage looks like. Not blood. Not names. Not who your ancestors were. Just love, messy, imperfect, chosen love. And a mother who would burn down a dynasty to protect her daughter's smile.